Uncensored, no holds barred talk. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is Global Reality Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thanks for being with us tonight for yet another live edition of the broadcast. Getting Moonbatty with you here on this Wednesday night. I guess it's Wednesday, right? Going into Thursday now. June into 15th into the 16th of 2011. Glad you could be with us tonight. And not a lot of material tonight. I got to be honest with you. Not a lot of... I wondered if I should even do a show tonight, but then again I remembered that if we when we don't have shows like we didn't have a couple of weeks when I was off recently from the death of my uncle and the death of my father, and we got zero support. It's nice to know that I have so many wonderful fans out there who who want to make sure that I keep going. That's true and not true. So yeah, I figured that taught me a huge lesson, and it taught me that people don't give a rat's ass what's going on in my personal life. They want live shows, and they're not live shows. They're not going to support. But you know what? Nobody's been giving support lately anyway. Not very many people. Few people. Been a couple of people out there keeping us alive, and I thank you so much to those people. But it just I figured I would get up here and give you something. Because there's a lot of people out there that, they don't give a damn. They don't want me up here like a fucking monkey every night, no fail. And if I'm not up here like a monkey every night, no fail, they'll just go listen to somebody else. That's the way it is. People are cold-blooded. They want everything for free. And, they don't give a damn how many hours I put in researching or how many hours I've put in researching through the years and how many hours I put in making films or anything else and playing in our band for free, for nothing. We do go play all these shows everywhere and we make nothing. We never get paid anything, and then I have to end up having to come up with money that I should use for food money to buy sticks and to buy, all this kind of stuff, all under the guise of trying to get the word out, but nobody wants to support us getting the word out, even though we are. I find that kind of messed up. Everybody talks all this smack about, let's change things and let's get stuff out there. And then the people that do actually step up to the plate and put it all on the line to do it don't get any help. And I just think that's, it's like we're all going to deserve what we get. I feel like that because the few people that are out there stepping it up are not getting any help. And it's vitally important that you have an outlet for this type of information. It can be life-saving, because the mainstream media is not always there. It doesn't always report everything that is news. You got to constantly have your nose to the grindstone on this stuff every day, like I do. Constantly looking at what's happening, monitoring news and forums, and it gets old after a while. I mean, I got to tell you, I get sick and tired of looking at news sites. Sick and tired of reading fucking forums and dumbass people's statements. But, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. I mean, we covered last night the stuff that's going on in Nebraska with this nuclear power plant, which is still getting zero play by the press. They're trying to sweep this motherfucker clean under the rug. And it's just bad news all around. It's bad news for everybody. I mean, you guys understand what's happening here, right? You understand that's not far from the New Madrid fault line. I mean, if this thing goes completely meltdown, you understand that they built that son of a bitch. They built that power plant right on a river, and that river feeds into the Mississippi River. If New Madrid happens, you're going to have a gigantic all the Great Lakes are going to spill into the Mississippi River and all these rivers. We might feasibly see in our time, ladies and gentlemen, a gigantic radioactive fucking lake in the middle of the United States. If New Madrid happens, that's what we're going to see. Throw this on top of on this Nebraska power plant thing, and you've got a nasty recipe for disaster here. And people's lives are on the line, and people need to know about this. And if shows like mine and others go away, it's going to do a lot more harm to us overall than good. So again, support our work. You know, we had our friend, my friend Tracy. She's got family up there in Nebraska. She heard my show last night, saw some of the stuff I'd posted about this, and called family members that she has that live minutes away from this power plant. They had heard nothing about it, of course, because they don't want to create a panic. If people in the United States right now thought for a chance that there is a nuclear power reactor in their backyard that could happen, do what happened in Japan happen here, it'd be total calamity and chaos. But I think some of her family and friends have are trying to attempt to get out of there, but they won't let them leave. Isn't that interesting? There are people that are trying to leave the area, evacuate, flood. They won't let them leave the area. Now, why is that? Well, that fits the classic scenario of things we've seen in the past. They want to get their death toll up, so they won't let people leave. And when people, these poor people won't even know what hit them because it's not being reported on. I would suggest that anybody out there that lives in the area where that nuclear power plant is to get the fuck out of town in any way you can right now. Don't listen to what the local law enforcement and all these clowns and television telling you. Go with your gut and go with what you think is the right thing to do and get the fuck out of there. That's all I can say. So, this type of information it can, if you do have it, it can save your life. And if you don't have it, you won't even know what hit you, man. And that's what they're counting on. They're counting on us being distracted by sports and television and the new summer Hollywood blockbuster movies and whatever sex scandal they're putting out in the television and media right now. I guess the current one is the Wiener's Wiener charade, which I haven't even covered, even talked about, even mentioned until now. It's the first time I've even mentioned it. That's how, in my scale, how high on the scale of my importance it ranks. But it's just we have not been. I don't think that we've been getting the support that is warranted for the things that we're trying to do here with this. So we need support right now, folks. I mean, I'm tempted to have a fucking pledge drive or something, or let you know the importance of the situation. I keep trying to be nice about it and not get up here and tell you red alert and all this and please support us, but I am telling you that because it's not fair. It's not fair to work your ass off for this and put everything, including my life and my livelihood, my good name on this, and some days, not know if I'm going to afford to be able to eat that day. And that's happened a few times this week. This week's been horrible for me. Because I have, one of the things that people don't understand is that I have so many hooks and feeders in the water that oftentimes, even when we do get in a little bit of support, sometimes that's gone and I never see it. What I mean is I have fees for unlimited Skype. That's, $10 a month. I've got fees for websites, fees for streams, fees for domain names and stuff that I've registered that I haven't even had time to make websites for yet. For everything that's going on, and that money's coming out of that. So inadvertently, what happens is throughout the course of the month, I have 4 or 5 or 6 different little bills that come out. $10 here, $20 there, $50 here, $30 there, and they all come out at different times during the month. So sometimes if we get, we'll get $30 in or something, or $50 in or something. And that's the only donation we've got in, the whole week. And somebody sees the shipping banner tick up, so they think that means we're getting support. But then they don't realize that, like what happened this week, a bill comes out and then boom, yeah, there went that $30 we just got in. And it went to go pay a bill, and now we have nothing, and now I have to get back up here and tell you again to support us. And people get tired of hearing it. But, we don't have ads. We don't have commercials. And I'm able to have a free and open platform here and say whatever I want to say due to that fact. But if I have to sell advertising and I have to put banners on my website and all this stuff, the free platform is going to go away. Because nobody's gonna give you money and support your show and your work if the things that you have to say go against what their company believes. Because they believe that what you're saying, it puts out the impression that what you're saying is authorized or endorsed by the people whose product you're selling, and they flat won't give you any money if that happens. So you see the catch-22 here. Because I'm here to tell you, if I have to resort the selling advertising for this network, it's not going to be the same. It's going to go back to the same thing it was before I started this network, which is I'm going to be very limited in what I can say, what I can talk about, and that's why whenever you tune into another radio network, any of the ones out there, and many of you have probably for years, even before finding out about some of the CMP information and stuff, have probably wondered why it is when you listen to certain networks, there's just certain topics they just refuse to talk about. And you're thinking, like I always did, what does it matter? It's all information, right? Why shouldn't we be discussing everything? Why is it that there's certain people and certain networks and certain shows sort of say, talk about this information over here, but don't talk about this this information over here? It doesn't have anything to do with it. No, it's all relevant. And anybody who tells you it's not all relevant is lying to you and has an agenda. So that's why you don't hear certain networks and certain shows talk about certain topics. Because I've seen it for a fact. I mean, when I was on Oracle, we had sponsors all the time threaten to pull out. And, I was even restricting myself and holding myself back over there anyway. Because some of the other guys over there on the network had were of the opinion that certain topics weren't supposed to be talked about, But yeah, man, it's it's a real big problem. Anyway, we've got a few news stories to get in tonight. Again, the website where this broadcast originates from is www.theglobalreality.com. It's www.theglobalreality.com. My email address is globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's globalrealityshow@ the letter G, then the word mail, MAIL.com. globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's where you can send in emails. If you have anything you'd like to hear me address on the show tonight, you can send it there. Also at the website, theglobalreality.com, we have the chip and band, the donate button. So again, we just need support right now. We need a fund drive. Either use the donate button if you don't want to fill up the thing for the bills, but whatever. Just please support us right now if you can. Let's see what we have in the email bag. I think I have a few things here. Just a couple. Where did they go? Here's one. It says, this is from someone named Sam. It says, have you heard the theory of pigs being a cross between wild boar and humans? I believe it was Dr. Deagle who we heard the idea from. They are supposed to be the result of early genetic manipulation by the Nephilim. Is that why the Jews weren't supposed to eat them? Maybe we've been eating Soylent Green all along. You're eating people. Anyway, it's interesting to think about whether it's true or not. Thanks for the show. Yeah, no, I haven't ever heard that. It's an interesting theory. I don't really know quite how you'd prove it. I mean, pigs don't really seem to have extraordinary intelligence or anything. But hey, it's a good idea. I just always believed, like everybody else, that it was so they wouldn't get trichinosis or whatever else it was out there from no refrigeration. I don't know. But it's an interesting theory. Yeah. I mean, it could be plausible. It would make sense, I guess. Here's another one from George. George says, hey, Josh, what do you think about Natalie Portman, a.k.a. Herschlag? Yeah, the Jew. Herschlag, or what about her baby being born on 6/14 when her mother, Shelley, was born on 6/9, and she was born on 6/9, 29 years later via induced labor by her father? Well, I mean, isn't the guy that she's married to, she had this kid with, isn't he in the Rothschild bloodline or something like that? It's, this is what they're into. I mean, why did the prince, have them make sure that, what was it, Prince Harry be born on the summer solstice? I mean, that's what they're into. She was 29 years later via induced labor by her father, Abner, the OBGYN fertility specialist. I'm betting the baby was really born on 6/9, but they lied to the press and said it happened 5 days later. Can you talk about their love of 69? Oh, yeah. The
love of 69, baby. Oh, yeah. Come to Papa and let's talk about a little 69 action. You know you like that shit, yeah.
We all know the sexual meaning is, but from a cosmic occult perspective, well, I don't really know that I have a lot of info on the occult cosmic perspective of 69. I will say this. If you look at it, it's also the number 69 is also what we see represented as the symbol for Cancer zodiac sign. I'm a Cancer myself, and so that also, it looks very much like a yin yang, and very much the as above so below aspect. That's what the number 69, if you look at it, that's what it represents. So that's one of the reasons why they like it so much. It represents the same. It's like very much like the yin yang, as above, so below. It represents balance. It's very much similar to the depiction of the snake biting its own tail that you see. That's another allegory for it. And we know that the elite are obsessed with having balance for them and them alone, and then keeping everybody else in the world off balance so that they can have balance. So that would be, another reason why that'd be a very powerful thing there. So yeah, I mean, I may not know all the ins and outs of why they are obsessed with that and what why they're into it, but that it definitely has to do with the fact that what it represents, again, as above, so below, as in the macrocosm, so in the microcosm, and just the whole idea that ties into the esoteric teachings and that whole kind of thing. You find it littered in all of the elite stuff because that's kind of their way of throwing it in our faces, and also throwing it in the faces of people like us who find out what it means, and find out about this secret knowledge. Because, and that's why you see it in, I think that's probably why you see it so much in things like, commercials, and people wonder why did they just throw this symbology out there? Why is it just always there? Why isn't all the corporate logos? Why is Alec Baldwin saying, on, Hulu commercials during the Super Bowl, we're aliens and we're here to eat your brains and all this stuff? Well, they do that because those of us that have figured it out, they like to throw that in our faces. Your average person doesn't know about esoteric things or secret teachings or any of that stuff. It just goes right over their head. It doesn't even show up on their radar. But those of us who figured this stuff out, those of us who know about this, two reasons. The main reason is that they're putting it out there for those people who are inducted into the brotherhoods. It's their way of communicating. Hey, this is us. If you're a member of one of these brotherhoods, that's like why another reason why they killed Kennedy in Dealey Plaza. Dealey Plaza, prior to it being Dealey Plaza, or long before there was ever a book depository building there, was the location of the very first ever Freemasonic lodge in the entire state of Texas. Now that gets, and I've told it to people down there at Dilly Paz before, and they just, their eyes kind of glaze over. They don't understand the implications of it. That's a very important thing. That's a power a power center there, right on smack dab on the 33rd degree, and it's also that's why they. You also have the obelisk there, in front of the reflecting pool. And that's why they chose that spot, so that in the future, people, would say, okay, well, obviously these are people of the brotherhoods that did that. It's a signal. And it's also a signal to those of us who have figured it out, so that when we see it, they try to create the chill factor, Oh, well, yeah, crap, there it is again. This stuff is real. They like to reinforce, that with those of us that have figured this stuff out, they want to make sure that, they scare us with this. That's why a lot of this information has been allowed to come out. And it certainly has backfired on them. They figure that by a lot of this information coming out, it would scare people so bad, would scare them into total obedience and get people to keep their mouths shut about it. But in turn, the opposite has completely happened now. And we start to see that more and more. I don't think I have any more emails. globalrealityshow@gmail.com. It's globalrealityshow@gmail.com if you want to send anything more in tonight. Not a lot of news. I will cover what I have, though. There is some important stuff here. I've been saying this for the entire time I've been on air. I've been telling you that there's a new ice age coming, even though the intelligentsia and the mainstream media and the Nobel Prize Committee tells us that global warming is indeed coming, and that we have to have global carbon taxes, and we have to have, we have to cut back on things. No. There's a reason why they created peak oil and all that. They're creating these artificial bottlenecks because they know that there's going to become a time very soon on Earth when this planet is going to become rapidly colder, and things like oil and gas and all this stuff for heating are going to become a very precious commodity. And we've talked about this, and what's interesting is how some of the stuff that we've covered in the past, we've been talking about Vulcan and the planet Vulcan and this Comet Ellen and people freaking out saying it's Nibiru when more than likely it's actually Vulcan. But when we covered the stuff about Vulcan a couple of years ago, one of the things that we talked about was this idea of how in the past when Vulcan has come close to Earth, we've had massive earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis, floods. We've had civil unrest, and we've had economic issues, as well as many ice ages, all coinciding with the passing of this planet on the other side of Venus and the other side of the sun that we don't see due to that. So here it is, after 4 years now being called a conspiracy theorist, people are finally starting to admit to this. I mean, go back and watch. It's on YouTube. That TV show that used to come on in the 70s, In Search Of, narrated by Leonard Nimoy. There's an episode from the 70s where they're warning about the ice age that's coming. Here it is, Daily Mail, Earth facing a mini ice age within 10 years due to rare drop in sunspot activity. That's right, the sunspot activity is tapering off almost to nothing. The sun is I think the sun's actually, I don't know, I think they've been lying to us all along about the real truth about the sun. More and more stuff about that starting to come out. There's been a lot of stuff coming up. There's people saying that the sun may actually have an iron core. An iron core may not be just a big ball of gas like they told us. That would imply possibly that our sun could actually be an artificially created structure, doesn't it? A planet that was created and turned into basically, a star, much like they've talked about with like the Lucifer Project and turning Jupiter into a second sun. which they, of course, did in the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey, 2010, which came out in 1984. The sun is heading into an unusual and extended period of hibernation that could trigger a mini ice age on Earth, scientists claim. A decrease in global warming might result in the years after 2020, the approximate time when sunspots are expected to disappear for years, maybe even decades. A decrease, it says, while the effects of a calmer sun are mostly good, there'd be fewer disruptions of satellites and power systems, and it could see a sharp turnaround in global warming. An absence of sunspots is not an unprecedented situation. It has happened before, but not since the early 18th century. Lead researcher Frank Hill of the National Solar Observatory said that the solar cycle is maybe going into hiatus, sort of like a summertime TV show. While scientists don't know why the sun is going quiet, all the signs are that it will. Dr. Hill and his team have based their predictions on 3 changes in the sun spotted by scientific teams: weakening sunspots, fewer streams spewing from the poles of the sun's corona, and a disappearing solar jet stream. Dr. Richard Altrock, the study's co-author and an astrophysicist at the Air Force Research Laboratory, said that these three cues show that there's a good possibility that the sun could be going into some sort of state from which it takes a long time to recover. Their prediction is specifically aimed at the solar cycle starting in 2020. Experts say the sun has already been unusually quiet for about 4 years, with few sunspots, higher magnetic areas that appear as dark spots. The enormous magnetic field of the sun dictates the solar cycle, which includes sunspots, solar wind, and ejection of fast-moving particles that sometimes hit the Earth. Every 22 years, the sun's magnetic field switches north and south, creating an 11-year sunspot cycle. At peak times like 2001, there are sunspots every day and more frequent solar flares and storms that could disrupt satellites. Earlier this month, David Hathaway, NASA's top solar storm scientist, predicted that the current cycle, which started around 2009, will be the weakest in a century. Mr. Altrock also thinks that the current cycle won't have much solar activity after tracking streamers from the solar corona, the sun's outer atmosphere, seen during eclipses. The streamers normally become busy around the sun's poles a few years before peak solar storm activity. That rush to the poles would have happened by now, but it hasn't, and there's no sign of it yet. That also means that the cycle after that is uncertain, he said. Matt Penn of the National Solar Observatory, another study co-author, said sunspot magnetic fields have been steadily decreasing in strength since 1998. If they continue on the current pace, their magnetic fields will be too weak to become spots as of 2022 or so, he said. Jet streams on the sun's surface and below are also indicators of solar storm activity, and they have not formed yet for the 2020 cycle. That indicates that there will be little or delayed activity in that cycle, said Hill, who tracks the jet streams. There are questions about what this means for Earth's climate. 3 times in the past, the regular 11-year solar cycle has gone on an extended vacation at the same time as cool periods on Earth. Skeptics of man-made global warming from the burning of fossil fuels have often pointed to solar radiation as a possible cause of warming the Earth, but they are in the minority among scientists. Earth has warmed as solar activity has decreased. Well, that's just absolutely not true, because they're not accounting in chemtrails and all this other stuff they won't admit to. But yeah, the sun is definitely up to something. I think there's something going on with the sun. I think there has been for a long time. They're not telling us about it. I think it very much has to do with of course, the galactic alignment, 2012, these other different events, planetary events that are happening, and of course, like everything, the elite, the priest class have known about this since time immemorial. They've known about this. The tribal elders knew about these cycles. And we actually, in the modern day, are actually more ignorant to the knowledge of these planetary cycles and sun cycles than the people who were on the Earth, 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. But yet we like to think we're so informed because we have the World Wide Web and everything else. But, all this crap information and, all this, pap of Hollywood stuff. And that's the whole thing is that what we're given in exchange for what is taken away is not equal. You understand? They withhold all this other information from us, give us a bunch of useless information, and then say, oh, see, we don't hide anything from you, blah, blah, blah. Look at this. It's all based on a lie. Let's see what else we have here tonight. Oh, do you guys hear about Lady Gaga's perfume that she's coming out with next year in 2012? Oh, this is great. Turns out that it's got like it's got the smell of blood and semen, the blood and sperm smell. First off, well, I don't know, oh man. First off, and I suppose it's her blood too, so that's just great. Blood and sperm perfume. Does sperm have a distinct smell to it? I mean, I don't know. Never gotten close enough to any to smell it, I didn't think it really had a smell to it. So blood and semen perfume, in the tear duct of an antelope. Musk of the tear duct of an antelope. Let me get that correct. I'm not making this up. You can't make it up. I mean, that's an alchemical witch's brew. It's a... My goodness. Unbelievable. Scientists genetically engineer female Frankenstein goats in male bodies to create human breast milk. Nazi lesbian hookers abducted by UFOs and forced into weight loss programs. I mean, that's what some of these goddamn articles read like sometimes. Genetic engineers are deliberately breeding transgender goats to see if their milk is similar to that produced by humans. The goats being created are effectively a female trapped in a male's body, complete with full male anatomy. The company behind them wants to see if their milk contains the same proteins as human breast milk, with a view to one day possibly selling it in stores. The goats have been christened goys. Isn't that funny? They've called the goats goys, a mixture of girl and boy. Well, isn't that what non-Jews call, everybody else the goy? So they called this. Oh, come on. Give me a fucking break. I mean, this shit's just out of control. It's half boy, half girl goat, so they call it a goy. And you didn't think we'd pick up on that, did you? It's just... The goy have been christened, the goats have been christened goys, a mixture of girl and boy, and 15 have been bred at the research facility in New Zealand. Critics have, however, already called for the breeding program to be closed down amid concerns that scientists are playing God. They've also asked about the dangers posed if the goats escaped and their DNA was introduced into a wider gene pool. Ag researchers said that 75% of the goats bred at its facility in Hamilton are transgender as a result of the program. All the males have been sterilized to stop them from breeding in a total. Yeah, this is what they want to do to us, isn't it? Yeah, turn us all into girly men, make us all transgender. That way they take the aggression out of us, and then we won't stand up and fight them. That's what they're trying to do. What all this gay conspiracy shit's about. I don't believe that the whole New World Order conspiracy is designed to make you a fucking, Peter Puffer like some people do. But, it definitely is part of the agenda. It definitely is, there is a very small, real part of it. It's that. But to say the whole fucking agenda is trying to turn everybody into fucking, rump rangers, that's just ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And in total, there are about 15 goys, and one of them so far has produced milk at the age of 6 months. I shudder to think what mankind is going to do to innocent animals to help out mankind and kill off all these innocent animals. It's just crazy. As the United States Postal Service looks at ways to cut budgets, and deal with its declining revenue. Yeah, the Postal Service almost broke in this country. I don't know what's going to happen there. The president of the National Association of Letter Carriers is going against the grain by suggesting that the agency should be increasing the services offered, including thwarting terrorists. Let me get this straight. You want to turn... is that how they're going to save the post office now? That wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. I bet you before it's over with, these motherfuckers will turn the United States Postal Service into a fully fledged, fully operational division of the Department of Homeland Security. Anybody want to take a bet? Anybody care to wager me? No, that's what it says here. President of the National Association of Letter Carriers, Frederick Rolando, has several ideas to increase the responsibility of some postal workers. Among them is to outfit postal trucks with sensors so letter carriers can thwart biological terrorist attacks. You know, these goddamn mailmen got to be saying, man, I didn't fucking sign up for this shit. Dogs eat my ass every time I go to fucking drop a letter. You know? AIDS-infected pit bulls every time you go and try to fucking deliver. I mean, that wasn't enough. No, now you got to thwart terrorists. You know, fuck, they don't pay me enough an hour to stop Johnny Jihad. Fuck this. I'm going down to work at Mickey D's, son. Fuck. Rolando testified before Congress in March 2011 that there were lots of ideas for new services that could be provided, adding to what letter carriers already do to protect community and national security. I didn't realize. I don't know if these mailmen are fucking shady as fuck sometimes. You really do. I mean, they really are fucking, they're wild and crazy. They're just, you know, they're shady as fuck. So you can keep your eye on them mailmen. Where'd my article go? There it is. The role of letter carriers could be greatly changed, according to Rolando, during a December 19th, 2010 interview on CNN. He said that they would be the first ones on the scene for disasters and so forth, weather issues, because they're the first ones in there, the only ones that can get into every neighborhood on a daily basis. There's things they could do with sophisticated scanners because they go everywhere. So this is what they're trying to do. Turn the fucking mailmen. That's how they're going to save it. Post office is going broke by design. They make them a part of and give them homeland security things like snooping on people. Again, you got boots on the ground, feet on the ground in every neighborhood and every place in the United States already, right? You have an infrastructure of that. So you make these guys undercover agents. You make them snoops and narcs and everything else. You know, the mailmen see a lot of shit. Mailmen see so much shit on a daily basis, it'd blow your mind because they're everywhere. So, you know, your mailman's going to be this, you know, your mail from now on, when the mailman comes to knock on your door, you know, to give you a package or something, you know, and sees your gun rack, you know, or your gun cabinet in the living room with, you know, probably your family's guns in there. Maybe you had something where your father's or grandfather's in there, you know, or maybe he comes to the door to bring you a package and, you know, smells some of your, some of that, those herbal jazz cigarettes you might like to smoke every now and again, you know, well, they're going to narc on you. That's genius. You had to figure this was coming. You had to figure these people were going to do this before it was over with, and I guess they are. Rolando says these first responder ideas are worth considering rather than the short-sightedness of canceling Saturday delivery from the post office. That's one of the options being looked at as the United States Post Office tries to make significant changes. They already don't deliver on Sundays, lazy bastards. The mail should run 7 days a week, not 6 or 5. Fuckers. But that looks like that's where it's heading. They're going to start enlisting the mailmen as fucking snoops. Let's see what else we have. Russia seizes a ton of animal parts smuggled from China. Listen to this. The 26 elk lips, yes, I said elk lips, were just the tip of the pile. The items the Russian customs agents reported seizing Tuesday were exotic, even by the standards of Russia's border with China, where wildlife smuggling is rampant. 1,041 bear paws, lynx fur, unspecified claw parts, and 5 tusks from the extinct woolly mammoth. What the fuck? Well, China make anything. They make anything for you in China. It doesn't matter what the fuck it is. Everything's made in China anyway. Everything's made in China. Everything is. You know, musicians out there, let me tell you something straight up, and this is the goddamn truth. Do not for a second think that when you walk into a Guitar Center and you see that $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 Gibson Les Paul hanging on the wall, says made in the USA in the back, do not kid yourself for 1 second and believe that that's made in the USA, because it's not. But still, they create this phony illusion around these things that put a phony value on them that justifies trying to get you to buy what amounts to a piece of wood with some strings on it for $4,000 and $5,000. Everything, I don't care what it is, everything's made in China. Now, where it's assembled is a different story. But if they pay 50% of their corporate activity in the United States and for 50% of their salaries in the United States, they can make everything in China, assemble it in the United States, and still stamp made in the USA on it. That's a fact. So they're just, man, China's just going hog wild. What else we got here? We're going to be reading from the final chapter tonight, chapter 41, To the Researcher. The final chapter of William Bramley's The Gods of Eden. We'll be doing that here tonight after we take a break. We've been going for about 42 minutes here, but I wanted to plow through all this news before we went to a break tonight, because we're probably just going to have a couple of it's going to be a shorter show tonight. Lulzsec hackers claim to take down the CIA. This whole thing with the Lulzsec hackers and all this stuff, this is all this is an operation. This whole thing. So I hadn't talked about that much. They're staging this cyber warfare so they can have an excuse and a pretext to shut down the existing internet, period, into story. I don't know how many days in a row I can get up here and tell you that. I've said it a million times. Rick Perry describes himself as a prophet. Bilderberg, Rick Perry, 2007. Looks like they're priming him for a possible presidential run. You may see him as president before it's over with, at least a one-termer. This is the story I've been waiting to cover all night right here. Let me get a drink for this one. Government releases partial list of chemicals found in oil dispersants. A year after the BP Gulf oil disaster and under pressure from environmental groups, the EPA finally released a list of chemical components in oil dispersants. The federal agency also disclosed health and safety information about the chemical components that were previously withheld from the public as confidential business information. The potential health and environmental effects of the unprecedented use of dispersants in the Gulf of Mexico, both in volume and the underwater application, however, remain unknown. The EPA released a list of the 57 ingredients in all of the dispersants eligible for use in oil spills and identified the specific ingredients in some of them, in particular Dispersant MareClean and Corexit 9500 and Corexit 9527, which were used in the response to the oil disaster in the Gulf. The 57 ingredients were part of a larger list of 150 chemicals made public by the EPA, which also included components found in consumer products. The new chemical dispersant data was released as a result of a lawsuit filed in July of 2010 on behalf of Florida Wildlife Federation and the Gulf Restoration Network. Well, this is bullshit. So it doesn't tell us what those chemicals are. This article doesn't tell us what they are. It just says they've released them. Well, that's bunk. I mean, why the fuck does it make any good whether or not they've released these if you're not going to provide us with that information in this article? That's horse shit. This is not disclosure. What, you have to go to some other website to find out what that is or something? No, bullshit. Horse shit. You don't put out a press release and say, oh, great news. They've told us what's in the dispersants. Okay, tell us. Well, no, you have to go to such and such website or something else to find that out. No, horse shit. You haven't disclosed anything. If you don't come right out with what's in it, then it's not disclosure. If somebody has to go dig and research and find what it is, that's not disclosure. That's a continuation of the obfuscation they've done from the very beginning of this oil spill. And the same thing they do with every other event. Unbelievable. They think that oh yeah, here it is, great news, and then you click on it, yeah, there's nothing. No kind of disclosure. If you've got any emails you'd like to send me in tonight, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's globalrealityshow@gmail.com. Love to have anything you'd like to send in. globalrealityshow@gmail.com. I'll do my best to read that. I actually don't do my best. I'll read it on air, answer a question, whatever you got here tonight. If we don't get any in during the break, then I will just continue to read from William Bramley tonight. We got probably, 4 or 5 pages in this last chapter here. So we'll take a break, come back, and get into that for you. This is the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. Back here with you on the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thanks for being with us tonight here. This another live edition of the broadcast tonight, and we're going to be getting into the final chapter tonight of William Bramley's The Gods Beat. I can't believe it's kind of it's kind of it's kind of an emotional thing, isn't it? We're coming to the end of the book, and it's been a fun time reading this book over the past few months with you guys, and I've definitely gotten a lot out of it. I know you all out there have, and it really is not. It's one of those things where when I think the first time I ever read a book on air, I think it was Vera Stanley Alder's The Finding of the Third Eye. And that series of reading that book on air was just so huge and such a hit that subsequently people asked me to read more books on air. It's not anything I ever thought I would ever do. It's not really something most people do in the realm and scope of this type of radio. But for me, it's like, there's no rules to this, make it up as you go along. What's, that's the biggest thing. Cause most of the time is, people are not going to read something in its entirety on, commercial radio. It's just a shitty format. But, chapter 41 to the researcher, we'll get into that here in just a few minutes. I've got one more news story I wanted to cover tonight that I forgot about, and it's a pretty important one, so I want to talk about that with you. Again, my website's www.theglobalreality.com, and the Jim and Banner donate button is there to support our work, so please do so. Now, the IPCC is talking about, which is the International Panel on Climate Control, climate. Is it the international? Is that what it is? The ICC? The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, rather, is what the IPCC stands for. But over the past year or two, there's been a lot of talk about geoengineering the climate against global warming and the rest of this stuff. And I saw a post by Chris Everard earlier of this same article on his Facebook page, and he says chemtrails are designed to stop the planet from incinerating. It's official. I have to say, I absolutely, wholeheartedly, 100% disagree with that. Wholeheartedly. Chemtrails are not being designed to keep us from incinerating. They're designed to create warming so that our planet doesn't freeze, because we have been heading into a new ice age, as we discussed earlier, for quite some time now. So I'm sorry. I respect Chris Everard, and he's made some great films. I have to say that's pure disinformation. Pure disinformation. They know full well the planet is going to a massive cooling. So they've been geoengineering the climate, spraying chemtrails, creating the greenhouse effect, trapping the heat down at the ground level, which is what's caused the ice caps to melt, and then telling us the planet is getting hotter because we're starting to see the effects of what happens when you geoengineer a climate to keep it from freezing. So I think Mr. Everard needs to do a little bit more research on this topic. But lighter colored crops, aerosols in the stratosphere, which is already there, and iron fillings in the ocean are among the measures being considered by leading scientists for geoengineering the Earth's climate. Leaked documents from the UN climate science body show. In this article at the top, it says, read the documents here. So that's a great place to click on that, and it'll actually take you to the IPCC's actual documents on this stuff. So definitely I'll drop a link to that article in the chat room there for you. We'll try to get that up on theglobalreality.com for you as well. In a move that suggests that the UN and rich countries are despairing of reaching an agreement by consensus at the global climate talks, the U.S., British, and other Western scientists will outline a series of ideas to manipulate the world's climate to reduce carbon emissions. It's absolute crap. This is nothing more than them making public the geoengineering operation. Because, see, in secret, they're having to get the funding in secret somewhere else. What they want to do is they want to tell everybody that blah blah blah. Oh yeah, now we're spraying chemtrails, and we're doing that to save us from global warming. By the way, we need the taxpayers to pay it, and we need you to have a global carbon tax to pay for it. You see, that's what they're going to do. They're going to lie to us about the cause, lie to us about why they're really doing it, and then turn it around and make us pay for it. But it's all based on a lie, as everything these guys is. But again, I just have a real problem with someone who calls himself a researcher like Chris Everard putting out this complete disinformation that they're spraying. I mean, he literally says right here, I'll read it for you again. Chemtrails are designed to stop the planet from incinerating. That's what he says. So if he believes in that statement that he's saying, then he believes that global warming is real. The planet is getting hotter, but they're spraying chemtrails to save us from global warming and not telling us about it? No, we're going through massive cooling cycle. And these chemtrails keep us from getting there too soon. That's why you've seen all these crazy weather patterns. Anyway, I wanted to mention that before I got into reading night. So there you go. All right, let me get a drink here. Interesting, this final chapter. It's funny. I was actually, it starts with a quote, and I actually had planned on. I come across this quote a while back, and had planned on putting this in the Secret Right Volume 2, because to me, I think it sums up. It's sort of a thought that I think people who maybe new to especially some of the stuff we're going to have in Secret Right Volume 2. I think it's something people need to bear in mind. Because I got to tell you, the acceptance and the way that people, because I was the first guy that came out in a large way and had a significant platform that talked about the Council for National Policy. Everybody that's come after me has rode on the coattails of all the years of research I've done on it. It's a fact. Period. End of story. There's just no way around it. I'm the first that went to bat on the issue, and I brought it to the public in a large way. And other people, thank goodness, have also talked about it as well, which has been and finally figured out and done their own research on it. But it is the customary fate of new truths to begin as heresies. Thomas Huxley. It is the customary fate of new truths to begin as heresies, and that was kind of how the CMP information was treated when I first started bringing it out. And all the stuff I've done exposing Alex Jones. I mean, they begin as heresies and become actually accepted truths. And that's exactly pretty much sums up, my work in that end of things. So let's get going here. Chapter 41 to the researcher. Thank you for staying with me. I realize that many of the ideas I expressed have probably been challenging for you to deal with as they were for me. If nothing else, I hope you found some of the information in support of my ideas interesting. I've always enjoyed new perspectives, and I believe that it is important to be willing to express them. Every perspective has something to contribute, but no perspective can contribute anything unless it is communicated. An important fact to keep in mind is that knowledge is, to a degree, a historical phenomenon in itself. Nearly every civilization at any given moment in history has possessed a broadly accepted body of historical, social, and scientific teachings to explain nearly everything. The irony, of course, is that many of those teachings are different today than they were back in the 1300s. More than likely, scholars working 500 years in the future will be as amused by some of our 20th century teachings as we are by some of the established teachings of the 14th century. It is therefore helpful to step back from one's own time and to understand that knowledge has never been an absolute. Despite assertions to the contrary, rather, knowledge has been an ever-changing commodity as it is enhanced and refined over time. The completion of this book marks the completion of my research, except for the possibility of one revision to correct any errors which I may discover or which are pointed out to me. I plan to do no more work in this area. This book demanded enormous financial, emotional, and social sacrifices that were enough to last me a lifetime. I hope to pass the torch of research to others. Despite its length, this book is but an outline. It only begins to present all of the information and evidence available on the subjects discussed. There exists an enormous body of data that I never had the time, money, or inclination to pursue, yet it is all highly relevant. I was also limited to the English language, so I barely utilized any non-English books or sources. Every chapter in this book could easily become a book in itself. My biggest problem was not one of scant and insufficient evidence. It was of being deluged with too much. Yeah, that's, believe me, that's been one of the biggest problems of trying to make films. You know, it's not, it's very easy to make a fucking 5-hour, or 10-hour, 18-disc magnum opus. That's easy. But is somebody really going to want to sit down? When somebody is especially somebody who has a short attention span, as most of us do in this day and age, a lot of people who need this type of info, people who, when you're just preaching to the choir who's used to getting preached to about those topics have no problem sitting through a 5 or 6 or a 10-hour movie, right? Because they're already used to the information. But a new person who is coming into the information, they don't have time to sit down and watch your 4-hour movie on the Council for National Policy, your 8-hour, 10-hour, 13-hour magnum opus on 9/11. They just don't have time for it. And so for me as a filmmaker, I find it, I just find it better to not, because the thing about it is, I think some people's impetus is to try and think that you have to put everything in the film. And I've never been like that. My thing is, I still want to leave I want there still to be some surprises. I want to give you the foreground. I want to give you, what I think are the best bits, the best tidbits of info, and then leave the rest to you because, heaven forbid, far be it from me to take away that aha moment from you that I've had in my own research and that you have, because that's a very, very amazing thing, And if you tell people everything, and you don't leave anything for them to go research on their own, then guess what? They're not going to go research it on their own. But if you give them enough information and enough, enough tidbits and enough of the story to get them, hopping mad about it or on fire to find out more, then you're more likely to have somebody that's going to go out and do their own research and start their own platform and, maybe want to dig deep and find some of this stuff. So that's the whole thing is, and, I see guys try to make these movies 4, 5, 6 hours long. I just think that's a mistake. I think it's asking way too much of any one person to ask them to watch a movie that you made that's 5 or 6, 7 hours long. I just think that's ridiculous. It's, people are, you got to give it an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, maybe 3, but past that, man, it's overkill if you ask me. And so I understand that as a researcher, man. It's not a lack of info. It's having too much with it and trying to get it down into a concise, digestible manner that is going to be able to reach a lot of people. Because, again, people who are already awake, they'd have no problem watching an 8-hour documentary on, or Tessarian and his origins and oracles, Fucking 50 DVDs or something. Somebody's already awake, has no problem watching that. You're going to have a hard time getting somebody who's used to playing World of Warcraft to watch your 8-hour documentary on the esoteric stuff. It's just not going to happen. I discovered that I could easily spend another 8 to 10 years accumulating it all and build a multi-volume encyclopedia from it, but that was not my purpose. When I began to realize the enormity of the project, I deliberately wound it down so that I would have some hope of presenting a one-volume book on the subject. I am trusting that others will add to what I have done by publishing writings of their own. I ran across many theories that I did not use. As radical as the ideas expressed in this book may seem, they are in fact somewhat conservative compared to the other theories in current circulation. Yeah, I don't doubt that. I tended to accept historical facts, dates, and personages as they are commonly accepted by historians. This may have been a mistake in some cases, but it is the approach I chose to take. A person researching the topics covered in this book will encounter many revisionist theories that attempt to overturn commonly accepted historical facts. For example, I ran into the George Washington is Adam Weishaupt theory, which speculates that George Washington had been secretly removed from the U.S. presidency and that Adam Weishaupt of Bavarian Illuminati fame, who actually looked a bit like George Washington, had taken Washington's place after Weishaupt's disappearance from Bavaria. Another theory doing the rounds is that the television transmissions of U.S. astronauts on the moon were actually filmed in a studio. Yet another is that the Earth is hollow and that UFOs originate from a civilization in the world below. Perhaps one, two, or all three of these theories are correct, but because I did not find enough information to conclusively validate them in my own mind, I did not adopt them. People researching the role of secret societies in the world history will soon or later encounter the writings of Nesta H. Webster. Mrs. Webster's works were published during the first 2 decades of the 20th century, and they bear such titles as The French Revolution, World Revolution, The Socialist Network, Surrender of an Empire, and Secret Societies and Subversive Movements. The main thrust of her books is that the secret societies, especially the Knights Templar Freemasons, have been responsible for instigating most of the major revolutions of the past 200 years. Her works have provided later researchers with a great deal of ammunition upon which to build conspiracy theories of history. It is unquestioned that Mrs. Weber was very successful in bringing forth a great deal of valuable information that probably would not have otherwise reached us today. All of her books reveal exhaustive work. Mrs. Webster might have gone down as the top researcher in her field, and her contribution to mankind might have been enormous had her own personal perspective not been clouded. Mrs. Webster made a fatal mistake by concluding that the world's apparent Machiavellian source was a so-called Jewish conspiracy. In her book, Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, she devoted an entire chapter to, quote, the real Jewish peril, in which she blames the Jews for the Christian world's subversion. This anti-Semitic slant is so strong, as is an anti-German slant, that the value of her research is lost because a researcher cannot readily trust all the information she presents. You know, that's a common thing. That's when you know somebody's an operator. It's just like Eric John Phelps, same thing with him. This is a shame, but it is also a good lesson to any researcher. It reveals that an anchored bias can utterly ruin any benefits that might otherwise accrue from this type of research. It also indicates the need to remain flexible in the face of changing history and evidence. Had Mrs. Webster lived longer and seen what happened to the Jews during World War II, her outlook may have been different. There were many avenues of investigation that I never had time to pursue, but which could bring forth some fruit, although I make no guarantees. I present them here in no particular order for those who might be interested in digging further. Number one, throughout the world, there is a very strong political and economic force, the labor union. Labor unions have done a great deal to improve working conditions for many working people, but there is no question that some union tactics have generated continuous conflict. Unionization has also had the effect of creating a mild form of feudalism by magnifying the superficial distinction between managers and non-managers and bringing the two groups into conflict. Interestingly, one of the key forces behind the early American labor union movements was an organization known as the Knights of Labor. The Knights of Labor were a secret society with secret oaths, just like the Brotherhood or other Brotherhood organizations. Although the Knights later dropped their mystical practices and eventually declined in strength, they played a role in creating the American Federation of Labor, the AFL, which has since grown to become the major union in America. Questions to research might be: who started the Knights of Labor? Were any of its founders members of other Brotherhood organizations, as seems likely from the character of the Knights of Labor? Number 2, one argument against the idea that there has been a Machiavellian source behind human warfare is the fact that primitive tribal societies, untouched by the Western world, have also engaged in repeated warfare. This would seem to disprove the Brotherhood connection and suggest that perhaps warfare is really just a part of human nature. No, it doesn't. I don't think it discounts the Brotherhood connection at all. Because I don't even know why Bramley would. That goes, I mean, to me, him even insinuating that goes against everything he's written in this book. Because just as he talked about, for thousands of years, on this planet, before the rise of civilizations or anything else, we've had constant reports of these quote unquote sky gods coming down and seeding man or humans with culture, with religion, with everything else. So, I mean, I don't think that there's just no other way around it. To me, I just don't see how somebody can say, mankind was seeded with religion, mankind was genetically engineered, but yet they weren't seeded also with the idea of constant warfare. I mean, that's ridiculous. How can you say that we were seeded with technology, we were seeded with knowledge and information and life and all this stuff and religion, but yet, of course, the only way to keep us controllable and keep us in a state where we won't be a threat to the custodians is to keep us constantly killing each other. I thought that Bramley was quite aware of that from what we read in this book. That just seems kind of weird. It's almost like it took him so long to write the damn book that he forgot what he believed in when he started writing it. Let me repeat that there are definite psychological factors behind human warfare that must be handled before the entire problem is solved. Machiavellian machinations merely increase the frequency and severity of war. Conflicts can still erupt without such machinations. It is, however, a remarkable fact that Brotherhood-style secret societies are extremely pervasive throughout the entire world and exist even among very primitive peoples. In fact, such societies appear to be as common in the primitive world as they are in the civilized one. But, for example, Captain F.W. Butt Thompson, writing in his book West African Secret Society, says of Africa, the native secret societies found amongst the peoples and tribes of the west coast of Africa are many. Nearly 150 of them are referred to in the following chapters. Captain Butt Thompson, Captain Butt, that's great, Captain Butt Thompson, what a great name, divided those societies into two basic groups, mystical and political. Of the mystical type, he wrote, these approximate in organization and purpose the Grecian Pythagoreans, the Roman Gnostics, the Jewish Kabbalah, and the Essenes, the Bavarian Illuminata, the Prussian Rosicrucians, and the worldwide Freemasons. In the course of the years, they have evolved an official class that may be likened to the priesthood founded by Ignatius Loyola, the Jesuits. Well, that's interesting. Saying that these secret societies like the Rosicrucians and the Gnostics and the Kabbalah may have evolved into an official class similar to the Jesuits. Well, that's a huge revelation, isn't it? Well, number one, that the Jesuits evolved into their a class in and of themselves. We know that, but and then number two, for the those are just shocking admissions there, because that is what you find. The people that exist in those groups become their own class of people, very different from everybody else out in the world. Some of the African secret societies were obviously brought in from the outside, such as the Mohammedan societies. In many primitive areas, however, from Africa to New Guinea, such societies are native. Questions to be researched might include just how pervasive is this form of mysticism in primitive society, How did the primitive secret societies begin to do? How did the primitive secret societies begin? And do they have legends of extraterrestrials? To what degree have they taught mystical beliefs that exalt and encourage war? Number 3, if a custodial society exists, then Earth's history may be simply be a tragic footnote in a much broader history beginning long before human civilization arose on Earth. Yeah, that's what I believe. Absolutely, that's the truth. What might that history be? What caused the apparent ethical, social, and spiritual decay of the custodial society? Is there any way to find out? Number 4, on November 18th, 1978, a tragedy occurred in the South American nation of Guyana, where the 900 men, women, and children were mysteriously murdered in an isolated religious commune known as the People's Temple, Jonestown. A large vat of drink containing poison was found at the scene, leading to an initial assumption that the deaths were caused by suicide. Oh, yeah, well, British SAS was just right off the coast of there. That was an op front to back. The victims' bodies were discovered lying side by side in neat rows, as though the people had drank the poison and had then been laid down together and died. However, when autopsies were performed on the victims, it was discovered that 700 of the 900 people had died of gunshot and strangulation, not poison. They had not committed suicide at all. They were brutally mass murdered. It is very likely that those who drank the poison either did so involuntarily or did not know what they were drinking. The only people to escape the tragedy were not present when the 900 victims were murdered. There are no known witnesses to the entire event. The question is, who murdered the inhabitants of Jonestown? On September 27, 1980, investigative journalist Jack Anderson ran a column about the Jonestown incident. One newspaper headlined the column, "CIA involved in the Jonestown massacre," with a question mark. Mr. Anderson cites a tape recording made of People's Temple leader Jim Jones, in which Jones referred to a man named Dwyer. According to Mr. Anderson, investigators have concluded that this was Richard Dwyer, deputy chief of the U.S. mission to Guyana. Dwyer had accompanied U.S. Representative Leo Ryan to the Jonestown encampment on that ill-fated day. Leo Ryan became one of the murder victims. But Richard Dwyer somehow was not affected, and even claimed later that the reference to him by Jim Jones was a mistake. Richard Dwyer, as it turns out, has been listed in the East German publication Who's Who in the CIA as a longtime CIA agent. Dwyer had reportedly begun his career with the spy agency in 1959. According to Mr. Anderson's column, Dwyer replied no comment when asked if he was a CIA agent. After the massacre, investigators found at Jonestown large quantities of weapons and drugs. The drugs included powerful psychotropics, Quaaludes, Valium, Demerol, and Thorazine. Another drug found at Jonestown was chloral hydrate, which had been used in the CIA's secret mind control program known as MK Ultra. Was Jonestown a CIA mind control experiment which recruited subjects, especially poor black people, through the guise of religion? The Jonestown massacre was triggered when a U.S. Congressman, Leo Ryan, flew to Guyana to investigate Jonestown personally after he had failed to obtain information about it from the State Department. Leo Ryan never lived to tell what he discovered, and nearly every last man, woman, and child was silenced. The massacre occurred during a time when many American newspapers were carrying stories about CIA mind control experiments which the CIA claimed that it was no longer conducting. Did the CIA slaughter 900 people to cover up the fact that it was still conducting such experiments on a massive scale in a small jungle compound in Guyana? Additional questions to be researched are, what is the true history of the People's Temple prior to Jonestown? What is Jim Jones' background, CIA asset? What supported him and his early church? Number 5. Books, movies, and other art forms tend to give a romantic twist to UFOs, spies, assassination conspiracies, and so on. As we are perhaps beginning to realize, behind the romance there lie some cruel and brutal psychoses. A significant problem in any society geared for overt and covert warfare is that sociopathic personalities tend to find a home in government. Sociopaths are not affected by qualms of conscience and are often delighted in harming others. They are frequently promoted to high positions within agencies engaged in warfare because such personalities are able to attack and harm others repeatedly without it adversely affecting them emotionally. Sociopaths with high IQs can be quite clever in how they harm others. This deviousness is often valuable to intelligence agencies. As history has shown, the more that a nation is oriented towards war, the more it will become dominated by sociopathic personalities. This domination, in turn, leads to a rapid decay of a nation and will eventually cause its ruin. This is one of the great dangers any nation faces when it becomes involved in long-term conflict, no matter how democratic or humane that nation might otherwise be. Questions to be researched might include: to what extent are true sociopathic personalities dominating governments today? Why do people tolerate them? Have those custodial religions which demand the worship of criminally insane beings as angels and God perhaps blinded many people to being able to see sociopathology for what it is? Number 6. This book barely touched on the influence of brotherhood organizations in Asian history. I discussed Hinduism, but there is a great deal more to be found. For example, the Bloody Boxer Rebellion of China in 1900 was instigated by members of an Asian branch of the Brotherhood Network, the Boxers. The Boxers were fiercely anti-foreign. They massacred over 100,000 people and often photographed the beheaded victims. They stirred up revolt, which brought to China the armies of several major Western powers to quash the uprising. Questions to be researched might include: what other wars and uprisings in Asia were caused by Brotherhood organizations, and what has the full impact of the Brotherhood Network been on the history of Asia? Well, I mean, in China, they believe their whole bloodline of the leadership was seeded by this reptilian snake dragon serpent thing. I mean, my goodness. Number 7, a topic I wanted to research deeper was the subject of drugs. We discussed drugs several times, but not in any great historical depth. While drugs seem to have always been a part of human culture, was there a time when drugs were really first pushed on society? If there was, when was it and who did it? Number 8, one highly publicized problem today is that of vanishing children. Many children are abducted every year by parents during custody disputes, by relatives, and by strangers. Many more children vanish by running away from home. Runaways and parental abductions are easy to account for, and they constitute the majority of missing child cases. There has been, however, some confusion about the extent of child abductions by strangers. In the early 1980s, the nation's leading missing child agency, Child Find Incorporated, stated that anywhere from 20,000 to 50,000 children were vanishing every year as the result of abductions by strangers. In 1985, Child Find revised that figure down to 600. I called Child Find to learn what caused such a dramatic change in the number, and I was told that the earlier figure was really a broad catch-all and that 600 was the true number of stranger abductions cases per year. To further confuse the issue, I later learned from another source that out of all runaways, about 3,000 in the United States disappear yearly without a trace. Will that figure also be changed? As the reader can see, there seems to be some genuine confusion regarding how many children are really vanishing. Many children are eventually found, of course. Others vanish completely. I would become interested in this problem because of reported abductions of humans by UFOs. The UFO abductions we learn of today are those in which the human victims are returned. Are there many known cases in which UFO abduction victims are not returned? Might some of those instances involve children? I even found myself asking this unthinkable question. If the human race had been created as a slave race, might it still be providing manpower, perhaps, in the form of human children to the custodial society? A respected UFO researcher of this generation is Jacques Vallée. Jacques Vallée, who has authored several influential books about the UFO phenomenon, was one of the first researchers to focus on the fact that the UFO phenomenon has been very closely linked to episodes of social change throughout history. Mr. Vallée also noted an apparent connection between ancient folklore and UFOs. Some of the little people in folklore have been described in much the same way as modern UFO pilots. UFO-like phenomena have been occasionally described in old stories of little people as well. One activity attributed to the little people in folklore was their frequent kidnapping of children. Many of those children would never be seen again. This was a major source of upset between humans and the little people. This raises some rather startling questions. Are there any recent child stealing episodes with a UFO connection? Is it conceivable that there could exist on Earth today a child stealing network which feeds an ongoing custodial demand for human labor? These questions are admittedly far out and the stuff of supermarket tabloids, but they may actually be worthy of investigation by some brave soul in the light of all we have come to know about the UFO phenomenon. I hope that some of the above questions will provide good starting points for additional research. In the final analysis, the important thing is to be flexible with ideas and even to have fun with them. By sticking my neck out, as I have done in this book, I hope that I will encourage other people to explore those topics which they are curious about and to share what they find. You and I may not always be right. The important thing is that we are willing to explore and communicate. Hear to that, my friend. Be careful that you do not base all of your beliefs upon a mere handful of writers, teachers, ministers, or scientists. Learn from them, but also explore on your own and have fun doing it. Do not always look to others for approval of what you have discovered. If your integrity says that something is a certain way, stick to it, regardless of any snubs or criticisms. On the other hand, be ready to change your mind if you discover in your own mind that you are wrong. Learning that one has erred is often a hard pill to swallow, but it is a part of the learning process. The man who pretends that he has always been right is either an egoist or a liar, and he does not learn much of anything either. Good luck and happy sleuthing. So there you go. The author welcomes questions and comments about his books. Readers are invited to write him at the following address: 5339 Prospect Road, number 300, San Jose, California, 95129. There you go. So that's William Bramley's The Gods of Eden. We have gotten through it. We are done. And great read, great book. I really enjoyed the whole experience of reading the book, and feel like I gained a lot more from reading it for you here on air than I probably would have just reading it on my own and stuff. And next book we're going to read is going to be The Lost Book of Enki by Zachariah Sitchin. So that should be interesting stuff as well. So there you go. Now hopefully that somebody will get that up. I'm sure somebody will probably have that up in I know the other parts are up on YouTube right now, but I think eventually somebody will probably make something that has, every show cut together in one big gigantic mega file like they did with the Finding of the Third Eye. That'll be great. So that concludes our reading of William Bramley's The Gods of Eden, and that also concludes our broadcast for the night. My website is www.theglobalreality.com. Please support us, folks. We've been getting just slim support lately, and we need it bad right now. Shipping banner donate button is there at the site. My name is Josh Reeves. I love each and every one of you. We will see you tomorrow for the broadcast. You guys have a great night and take care.